A former soldier hunched in the bleachers during an Indiana Fever matchup, gripping a relic that seemed totally out of place in such a loud, chaotic environment. Dangling from his hand were his deceased father's military identification plates, cold steel harboring 50 years of heartache, affection, and priceless history. That evening concluded with him losing those precious tokens. The ensuing events, however, defied every single expectation of a typical sports story. You see, the individual who stumbled upon those tags bypassed the typical security desk and ignored the lost property bin entirely, refusing to just post a social media update and walk away. Instead, she spent hours scouring official armed forces archives. After hunting through various online profiles, she located the old soldier, organized a private encounter, and returned the heirlooms directly into his palms. Eyewitnesses describe a moment so raw and powerful that it reduced even the toughest spectators to heavy sobbing. The mystery benefactor was none other than Caitlin Clark. According to a fellow player who recently spilled the beans during a broadcast, this wasn't some isolated publicity stunt. She had been performing these acts following every single home game throughout the entire year, laboring in a hollowed-out stadium without a single lens or fan to witness her kindness. Once the truth emerged, the news did more than just go viral. It paralyzed the sporting world with sheer disbelief. This revelation paints a portrait of her character in the shadows that far surpasses any flashy highlight, corporate endorsement, or scripted marketing strategy. This is the hidden narrative that was never meant for public consumption. The curtain was pulled back in the most ordinary of ways, not via some orchestrated media briefing or a strategic press release, but through a fleeting, honest remark during a casual audio interview that seemed insignificant at first. A colleague from the Fever roster joined a show for what promised to be a routine chat about life inside the locker room. The interviewer eventually inquired about the superstar's true persona once the broadcast crews had packed up and left. It was the sort of prompt that typically elicits boring, scripted responses regarding professional discipline and group dynamics. Harmless and predictable, the answer would have pleased any agent. But then the tone shifted. One small observation from the player sent the whole discussion down an entirely new path. Back when the season was young, this teammate had returned to the court late at night to retrieve a forgotten personal item. The facility was eerily silent, the thousands of screaming fans having long since vanished into the night. The rest of the squad had already headed home, and the overhead stadium lights were slowly fading into total darkness. Amidst the shadows, she spotted Caitlin Clark by herself, clutching a sack and meticulously checking every row of the bleachers to collect possessions abandoned by the spectators. Frozen in place, the witness observed the scene for a beat before finally speaking up to ask what on earth she was doing. The superstar's response was blunt and entirely devoid of ego. She noted that supporters spend their hard-earned cash to support the team. Returning their lost property was simply the bare minimum she could offer in return. End of story. There were no grand declarations or moral lectures, and certainly no hope that this habit would ever make the headlines. It was merely a straightforward choice by an athlete who viewed scavenging the stands as a productive way to spend her midnight hours, barely giving it a second thought. Stunned into silence, the teammate stood there motionless for a few seconds before she eventually joined in to assist with the search. However, the most mind-blowing aspect of this tale often gets overlooked as people focus purely on the sentimental value of the returned goods. When you actually look at the sheer volume of her efforts, the numbers are absolutely overwhelming. Throughout that 1 year, reports suggest she tracked down and delivered over 50 different lost objects to their rightful owners. That is not 50 items throughout her playing life, but 50 in just one grueling season of professional play, spanning from triumphant victories to crushing, heart-wrenching losses on both home and away courts. No matter the final score or her level of exhaustion after 40 minutes of elite physical competition, she consistently returned to those concrete steps to pace the aisles. The list of recovered treasures speaks louder than any data set. Smartphones, billfolds, key rings, plushies, and high-end gems, including wedding and engagement bands that she knew held emotional significance far outweighing their price tags. These were symbols of life's most sacred promises, the things you only realize are gone when you are miles away and your heart sinks in panic. She did not merely gather the debris and dump it on a janitor's desk. Based on the first-hand testimony of her peer, she collaborated closely with stadium management, extracting clues from the items to hunt down owners on the internet, often choosing to meet them herself instead of trusting a bureaucratic system to get the job done. It seems she recognized a harsh reality many overlook. Official lost and found departments are where memories go to die. Electronics are factory reset and cash-filled pockets vanish into the void. The traditional solution frequently proves useless. Consequently, she engineered her own private recovery operation under the cover of night, keeping the entire mission a secret from the world. Cold data pales next to personal tales. You might process 50 lost items logically, but the heart remains unmoved. But once a plush toy enters the frame, a profound shift occurs deep within your chest. A little girl had accidentally abandoned her favorite stuffed friend in the arena seats following a fever match. It is the kind of tragedy that feels world-ending at 7, trivial at 30, and devastating once you raise a child of your own. While strolling through the stadium post-game, Caitlin spotted the abandoned toy. She took to the internet, tracked down the family via social platforms, and brought the item back herself before the following home match. Consider the sheer labor required. She noticed it, took pictures, and broadcasted the search publicly to find the owner. She waded through the noise to find the rightful family and handled the logistics of the reunion herself. All this occurred amidst grueling workouts, press circuits, and brand deals, the heavy burden of being the most marketable figure in women's hoops history. She chose to dedicate that energy to a stranger's toy, simply because a kid's happiness hung in the balance. Then a wallet appeared, filled with several $100s, plastic cards, and personal identification. Typically, such a find ends up with security, where the cash vanishes 999 times out of 1,000, leaving the owner a week of red tape. Rumor has it Caitlin bypassed the system, contacted the person herself, and handed everything back untouched. Just hearing her voice on the other end of the line reportedly moved the owner to tears. Stories about wedding bands and engagement rings surface frequently in her colleagues' recollections for a specific reason. She went to extremes that far exceeded standard protocol, recognizing these weren't merely expensive trinkets. These pieces were heavy, with personal history and emotional weight. Those rings represented 30 years of marriage or the nervous start of a life together. The gulf between a cold transaction and a human touch is what turns a lost item into a lifelong memory. Eventually, the narrative shifted to a set of dog tags. A former soldier had lost his father's Vietnam-era service tags at the game. This was no mere accessory, it was the physical bridge to a fallen parent. It spoke of sacrifice and honor. It represented a generation of men who returned from war, fundamentally altered, often choosing silence over stories. Such treasures are utterly priceless, the kind no insurance provider could ever truly replace. Finding them during her post-game ritual, Caitlin lacked any context or identity for the owner. All she sensed was that these metal plates were of immeasurable importance to someone. So she fell back on her standard routine: investigation. She scoured veteran records, hunting for a name. Utilizing social media, she finally pinned down the veteran, reached out, and set up a face-to-face meeting, hand-delivering the tags herself. The resulting encounter was described as profoundly moving by those who heard of it. It wasn't a scripted finale or a polished soundbite for the news. Just a quiet room with two individuals and an object vibrating with unspoken meaning. Let us be precise here. These anecdotes stem primarily from a single peer's testimony on a podcast. The league's front office hasn't signed off on every single detail as official fact. While the Indiana Fever organization confirms her fan dedication generally, supporters have also stepped forward with their own unverified stories. Yet the specific details, the toy, the tags, the wallet, all trace back to this one report. We are treating these as lived experiences rather than verified historical documents. That said, the spontaneous proof, the screenshots of direct messages and candid photos shared by fans, carries weight. This uncoordinated evidence paints a portrait that doesn't feel like a manufactured PR stunt. Here is the angle of this narrative that truly demands our focus. When a global icon does something virtuous, the default reaction is to hunt for the hidden motive or the calculated public relations play. Usually, such cynicism is entirely justified in the world of sports. Pro athletes at her level live within high-tech bubbles of agents and image managers. They have marketing experts and consultants. They have entire departments dedicated to identifying these human moments and weaponizing them for the brand. They turn kindness into content and character into a commercial campaign. The machinery is always humming. The mechanism is incredibly efficient, turning genuine kindness into pure operational momentum. Every serious investigator seeks the origin point, and her peer provided a precise timeline. This wasn't some calculated image rehab or a clever tactic cooked up by a high-priced consulting firm. Per the first-hand report, everything began early in the schedule, back when Caitlin was visibly drowning in the transition to the pros and bleeding from relentless scrutiny. She was wading through a high-profile Steep learning curve where nothing was promised, and her very place in the league felt like a giant question mark. Right in that fragile window, she was lingering in deserted stadiums to gather lost items, while every talking head wondered if she even belonged on the court. Not as a reaction to heat, or a desperate survival bid. It was simply a choice she made during her most vulnerable professional hours. That specific chronology effectively dismantles any jaded theories about her motives. Had this habit surfaced following a scandal or a bad press run, one could easily dismiss it as damage control. However, the sequence, as it is laid out, proves she was prioritizing others when her only logical focus should have been her own survival. You simply cannot manufacture a history like that after the fact. The subsequent shift within the Indiana Fever locker room often gets overshadowed by her individual actions, yet it remains the most vital clue for anyone trying to decode the culture she is silently constructing. The player who witnessed Caitlin's late-night ritual didn't merely walk away in awe. She joined in. Whispers moved through the locker room, and soon, more jerseys were visible in the stands after hours. What began as a lonely habit transformed into a powerful collective movement, an unwritten law of the Fever that required no memos, no coaching edicts, and certainly no corporate approval. Authentic organizational shifts rarely happen with such organic grace. In every professional sports tier, front offices burn through cash, trying to manufacture the kind of genuine empathy and shared purpose found here. True connection is almost never mandated from the boardroom. It sparks when a leader acts with integrity, inspiring others to follow suit. Caitlin Clark became that spark. She didn't give a lecture or organize a committee, she just acted, and people took notice. That solitary habit sparked a massive ripple effect, as the entire roster took ownership of the practice, creating a shift that truly demands a moment of quiet reflection. While Coach Christy Sides highlights the veteran influence on their environment, this particular story provides a tangible anchor that far exceeds standard post-game cliches about chemistry. We can point to a single person staying late in a cold arena as the catalyst for a total cultural overhaul. The custodial crew at their home court reportedly confirmed that this behavior wasn't a one-time occurrence but a consistent practice. In their years of working behind the scenes, they had never seen a superstar show such dedicated care for the mess and memories fans left behind. This is objective evidence from workers who have nothing to gain, carrying far more weight than any media narrative. The path this information took to reach the public is just as revealing as the acts themselves. Starting on a teammate's podcast, the news hit social media before exploding into the sports mainstream, triggering a rare reaction. Instead of validation coming from the front office, from the franchise, the truth was bolstered by a wave of ordinary people who had been keeping their own stories secret for months. A flood of supporters came forward, sharing private messages and gift photos that verified the legend one person at a time. Evidence surfaced naturally, growing into a mountain of unforced proof. Random strangers, completely unrelated and lacking any hidden agenda, slowly pieced the puzzle together. This lacked the polish of a corporate spin campaign. Such raw, disjointed authenticity simply cannot be manufactured. Real magic like that is either there or it isn't. Journalists seeking a soundbite found their golden PR moment utterly dismantled by Caitlin's blunt reaction. She dismissed the praise, claiming she acted as any human should, and refused accolades for basic decency. Witness accounts suggest she felt real unease under the spotlight, avoiding the rehearsed modesty of a press agent. Instead, she scrambled clumsily to push the focus onto literally anything but herself. Such a bizarrely selfless reaction requires a deeper look. Superstars with her level of market value rarely sprint away from a glowing headline. The massive corporate machines surrounding such icons usually work overtime to turn every kindness into a viral campaign. By aggressively fighting the hype machine, her refusal to exploit a viral win shatters the theory that she is merely a hollow corporate creation. Clarity is vital here regarding what this incident actually proves and what remains unanswered. Serious debates regarding the uneven split of dollars and airtime throughout the league remain incredibly valid. These systemic flaws persist regardless of any single athlete's personal integrity. Discussions concerning racial bias in sports media, highlighting who gets the spotlight versus who gets ignored, and the massive pay gap between newcomers and legends are crucial. These heavy topics require rigorous debate, and one good deed doesn't wipe them away. Using her kindness to silence systemic critiques is a logical failure, yet one specific argument feels particularly threatened now. Some claim she isn't just lucky, but rather a soulless corporate puppet, a facade built by suits that lacks any real heart or soul. This theory demands that every move she makes be a calculated act, a mere byproduct of boardrooms and marketing teams who use her name to sell tickets and jerseys. It hinges on the idea that her soul is scripted. Yet, a consistent long-term habit has emerged, a quiet ritual performed in the shadows after every buzzer, born when her future was most uncertain. She fought to keep these acts secret and winced when the world finally noticed this recurring behavior. Janitors and random spectators, folks with no reason to lie, have confirmed her silent gestures of goodwill. This selfless streak simply doesn't fit the fake product narrative. It defies the logic of her harshest critics. It reveals a woman acting on pure principle, seeking zero credit while actively dodging the limelight. Two truths can coexist. The system can be broken, and she can still possess a heart of gold. One reality doesn't cancel out the other. However, those calling her a fraud lost their footing the second those veterans' identification tags surfaced. Step away from the personal drama to witness the massive shifts happening across the horizon. This isn't merely a heartwarming anecdote. It's a warning shot for a much larger revolution. The league is teetering on a monumental edge that analysts have yet to truly comprehend. Fresh television contracts are rewriting the rulebook on money, while the Fever are already outgrowing their home court. Looming labor talks carry a new weight, fueled by the massive tidal wave of cash her stardom unleashed. Athletes from every corner, including veterans who survived on peanuts to keep this dream alive for decades, are demanding a slice of the pie that finally matches the billions they now generate. This war is inevitable and righteous, with Caitlyn trapped right at the eye of the storm. She stands as both the main driver of this new wealth and she is the cornerstone athlete whose financial terms will set the standard for every player following in her footsteps. The weight resting on her shoulders is a complex, multi-layered burden without a single parallel in the history of the women's game. Yet, here is the vital link most observers overlook. Her quiet post-game ritual serves as a blueprint for how she handles that intense heat. The deadliest pitfall for a star of her magnitude is the slow erosion of the real person in favor of a polished corporate image. This transformation happens in the shadows, where genuine humanity is gradually harvested and repackaged as digital content. Those raw, unscripted interactions are eventually transformed into nothing more than strategic marketing tools. The individual gets swallowed by the massive machinery of fame, leaving behind a hollow, optimized performance that supporters eventually sense, even if they cannot describe it. It is that chilling moment when an icon no longer feels like a living, breathing person. However, her habit of tidying up the stands reveals a core instinct to move toward humanity rather than retreat from it, not as a PR move, but as a reflex. She lingered in deserted stadiums, once even hunting down a veteran to return a set of dog tags belonging to his late father. She personally drove to deliver a toy to a child she had never met, an act that offered absolutely zero commercial gain. Every one of these moments cost her time and emotional energy, yielding no profit except the internal peace of doing the right thing. At only 22 years old, she is just starting a journey that experts believe will fundamentally redefine the future of the sport. The character traits being forged in this very moment, the integrity she displays when the cameras are off, and the instincts that guide her in empty arenas long after the fans have departed. These small choices snowball over 10 or 20 years, eventually becoming the very structural integrity of a legendary career. The titans who transcend their sport and become cultural icons almost always do so through a steadfast character that never wavers. This legacy is built on invisible patterns discovered slowly over time, often revealed through the kind of secret a teammate chooses to tell on a podcast because she witnessed something profound in a quiet gym that the public deserved to know. Youth mentors across the country are reportedly already using these stories to shape how they speak to the next generation of players. The core truth is ancient. Your real character is defined by what you do when there is no one around to applaud. That specific mantra has been plastered across locker room walls for the better part of a century. But that lesson carries a different weight when it has a recognizable human face, allowing a coach to show a young dreamer exactly what it looks like. When a world-class superstar chooses to act with humility in a dark, lonely arena after an exhausting battle with absolutely no audience, that is the kind of shift that changes how an entire generation views the heart of competition, and the narrative is still being written. More and more witnesses are coming forward with personal accounts that add new dimensions to this emerging portrait. That single conversation with a teammate has sparked a deeper dialogue within the Fever camp about how they present their identity. They are realizing it isn't about managed PR, but the natural buildup of small, authentic moments just like this one. Caitlin Clark enters her second professional season, carrying the massive expectations mentioned here, plus the friction of a league in the middle of a total rebirth. The era of massive broadcast dominance has officially arrived. The stakes are higher, and the financial rewards are far more significant than ever before. The political tension of her being the catalyst for record-breaking profits, while her peers have yet to see that wealth hit their own pockets, is a reality that isn't fading. What we finally understand, thanks to a teammate breaking the silence, is the unshakable foundation sitting beneath all that noise. The woman standing before the flashing lights and faces, the corporate boardrooms and the high-stakes negotiations, is the exact same soul who was walking through empty stadium rows alone during her first weeks as a pro, picking up trash because she felt it was the decent thing to do. A strong start guarantees nothing, of course, as the heaviest pressures can break even the most resilient spirits. The hungry engine of celebrity has chewed up and spat out many athletes with seemingly more durable foundations than hers. Yet, the habits you build when the world isn't looking are the only things that hold you together when the entire world is watching. The virtues held in a silent, hollowed-out gym are the ones that will eventually surface in a sold-out arena. The private reflexes she developed are what dictate her public grace when everything is on the line, like getting dog tags back to a mourning veteran, or making sure a little girl's teddy bear was returned, or finding a woman's lost wedding ring before the next tip-off. She did these things 50 times or more without an audience, without a payout, and with a clear desire to remain completely anonymous. That is the true bedrock. Now, watch closely to see what she builds on top of it.